After a heated argument, Maya Miles said, "You'll never be in control of this family." I made sure of that. She smirked. 2 months later, she found out I'd been quietly granted conservatorship over her husband's estate after he was diagnosed with cognitive decline. She showed up at the hearing with tears. I showed up with documents. The judge looked at me and said, "The authority is hers now." I've never been the type to fight loud. I don't slam doors or yell across rooms. I take in everything quietly, and when I move, I make it count. That's probably why my mother-in-law never saw me coming. Her name is Barb. She's the kind of woman who believes being the loudest in the room makes her right. She runs on control, controlling her husband, her house, her grown son, even the meals we eat at Thanksgiving. She's the queen bee of her little circle in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and she expects everyone to play along. When I married Nate, I thought I was just marrying a man. I didn't realize I was marrying into a system, a whole family dynamic that centered around whatever Barb wanted. At first, I stayed out of it. I figured it was easier to let her think she was in charge. I bit my tongue when she commented on how I dressed. I smiled when she recooked my food like it wasn't good enough the first time. But Barb had this way of pushing a little further every time I let something slide. One Thanksgiving, she told Nate I should try making a real stuffing instead of using my mom's recipe. Another time, she told me to leave the money stuff to the adults when I asked a question about how Ron, her husband, was handling their joint account. She didn't even look at me when she said it. She said it to Nate, like I wasn't even there. Still, I stayed quiet. Until the night she shoved my homemade lemon tart off the counter like it was trash. That might sound like a small thing, but it was the last straw in a long string of little humiliations. My mom taught me how to make that tart. She died 2 years before I met Nate. That recipe was all I had left of her. And Barb shoved it aside without a thought, just because it wasn't her dessert. After dinner, when she raised her wine glass and said, "To the women who really run this family," something in me snapped. She looked right at me when she said it. Everyone laughed, Nate too, but I could tell he didn't know what to do. I didn't say anything until I was helping her in the kitchen after everyone else had gone to the living room. That's when I let it out. "You act like I don't belong," I said. "Like I'm just someone Nate dragged in off the street. I'm not going anywhere, Barb. You need to stop treating me like I don't matter." She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Just wiped her hands on a towel and gave me that smirk I'd come to hate. Then she leaned in close and said, "You'll never be in control of this family." I made sure of that. I asked her what she meant. She shrugged like it was obvious. "Ron's finances? I manage everything. I'm the one who signs the checks. The house? In both our names. Power of attorney? Already handled. Nate? He knows where his loyalty is. You? You're just passing through." That night, I didn't yell back. I didn't tell Nate right away either. I took a long shower, sat on the edge of our bed in silence, and started thinking. See, what Barb didn't realize was that I'd been paying attention. I noticed how Ron got confused sometimes. How he'd call me Marcy, which wasn't my name. How he told the same story 3 times at dinner. How he got lost trying to find his keys in the kitchen drawer. I noticed. And I remembered. The next week, I talked to Nate. He'd seen it too. He'd brushed it off, but now he was starting to worry. I told him we needed to get Ron checked out. It took some convincing, but he agreed. The neurologist was kind but firm. Early-stage dementia. Ron wasn't at a point where he needed full-time care, but the signs were clear he wasn't capable of managing everything on his own anymore. Barb didn't want to hear it. She argued with the doctor. She said Ron was just forgetful. But it was real. That's when I started meeting with an elder law attorney. Quietly. No drama. Just information. I learned that conservatorship was possible if we could prove that Ron needed help and that I could provide it. My lawyer said it wouldn't be easy, especially if Barb contested it, but I had something on my side. Ron trusted me. He liked that I listened. He said Barb always rushed him, cut him off. When I asked if he'd be okay with me helping him manage things, he said, "I'd feel safer, honestly." We wrote that down. Had him sign things while he was still legally competent. Got medical records. Collected copies of confusing bank statements that showed money going out in weird patterns. Barb had been writing checks to herself, calling them reimbursements. I filed the petition for conservatorship 2 months after that fight in her kitchen. Barb didn't know. Not until the court date came in the mail. She showed up at the courthouse like she was walking into a PDA meeting. Hair done, pearls on, bright red lipstick. She brought letters from neighbors and a priest who didn't even know Ron personally. She was crying before the judge even called the case. She talked about how long they'd been married. How she'd taken care of Ron for years. How this was just a misunderstanding, that Ron was still fine, and I was just a manipulative outsider trying to steal what wasn't mine. Then it was my turn. My lawyer handed the judge a folder thick with documents. Medical records. Letters. Statements. A video we recorded of Ron calmly saying, "I trust her. I want her to help." The judge read everything. Asked questions. Listened. And then he said, "The authority is hers now." Barb froze. Her mouth opened a little, but no sound came out. It was like watching a machine break down. I didn't look at her again. I had control now, legal, financial, medical. And I wasn't going to use it to hurt anyone. But I wasn't going to let her keep hurting Ron, either. After the judge gave me the conservatorship, everything changed, but not in the way I thought it would. At first, Barb went quiet. Too quiet. She didn't call. Didn't show up at our house. She even skipped Ron's birthday. Nate thought she was embarrassed. I thought maybe she was finally backing off. But then the letters started showing up. Not from Barb. From her lawyer. The first one said she was contesting the conservatorship. That I had manipulated a confused and vulnerable man. That I had turned her own son against her. That I had strategically inserted myself into Ron's care to gain access to family wealth. Nate was furious. He wanted to drive straight to her house, but I stopped him. We were past the point of yelling and door slamming. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was legal. We responded through my attorney. We sent everything again, the medical reports, the signed statements, the video. The court held firm. The conservatorship was legal and active. Barb didn't stop there. Next, she filed a motion claiming I was mismanaging Ron's care. She told the court I was isolating him. That I refused to let her see him. That I was controlling every conversation, every visitor, every dollar. It was all lies. But I realized then this wasn't about Ron anymore. It never really was. This was about power. Barb couldn't handle the fact that she wasn't the one holding the pen, making the decisions. She wasn't mad that Ron needed help. She was mad that I was the one helping him. I tried to be civil. I even offered supervised visits. Told her she could see him whenever she wanted, as long as I was there. But that wasn't good enough. She said she'd rather die than be babysat by some girl who married into the family. Nate begged her to stop. He reminded her that Ron needed peace, not courtrooms and lawyers. But Barb didn't care. Then something happened that pushed it all over the edge. I got a call from Ron's pharmacist. Barb had tried to pick up his prescriptions and told them she was still his power of attorney. The pharmacist said she got angry when they told her she wasn't authorized. She caused such a scene that they had to ask her to leave. That same week, I found out she tried to access one of Ron's old bank accounts, one that was dormant, but still active. She'd used his login info, tried to move money into her name. My lawyer sent a cease and desist. The bank flagged the activity. We added it to the court record. Barb showed up at our house that night. Unannounced. It was raining hard. She stood outside the door, drenched, shaking. When I opened it, she looked past me and said, "Where's Ron?" I told her he was asleep. She tried to push past me. I blocked her. "You need to leave." Her voice cracked. I'm his wife. I've been taking care of him for 30 years. You think a couple signatures and a judge makes you more important than me? I stared at her. It's not about being important. It's about doing what's right. She took a step back and said, You're going to destroy this family. And I said, No, Barb. I'm just not letting you control it anymore. She left. But something told me she wasn't finished. 2 weeks after that night, something strange started happening. Mail went missing. At first, I thought it was just delivery delays. Everyone complains about the post office. But then I noticed that Ron's insurance paperwork, which I was waiting on, never came. I called the company. They said it had already been delivered and signed for. But I never signed anything. Then Ron's old friend, Harold, stopped by. He looked uncomfortable. Said he wanted to talk privately. We sat on the porch while Nate was inside with Ron. Harold fidgeted with his hat before he said it. Barb came to see me, he said. Said you were abusing Ron. Said he was locked away, not allowed to see his friends. Said you were stealing from him. I stared at him. Do you believe that? He shook his head. No. But you need to know she's saying it. To everyone. I found out that Barb had been making the rounds. Church friends. Old neighbors. Even the pastor. She told them I was a gold digger. That I married Nate for money. That I isolated Ron to take his estate. She showed them fake spreadsheets she made herself. Highlighted numbers that didn't make sense. Claimed they were proof. One of those neighbors must have believed her because 2 days later, APS, Adult Protective Services, showed up at our door. They said they got an anonymous call. Said there was concern Ron was being neglected. I let them in. Showed them everything. His meds, his room, the schedule I kept. The memory games we did each morning. The fridge full of labeled meals. The folder with every medical visit. The woman from APS looked at me, then at Ron, who was smiling at her like she was an old friend. Ma'am, she said, I think you're doing a better job than most families we see. But whoever made that call, they didn't want help. They wanted to scare you. Barb. It had to be. We thought about a restraining order, but my lawyer said it was too early. We needed more. Something undeniable. I didn't have to wait long. A week later, Nate's cousin, Amanda, texted me a photo. It was Barb, standing with a man in a suit outside a nursing home in Lancaster. In the caption, Amanda wrote, She's saying you're about to dump Ron in here and sell the house. I drove straight to the home. Walked right up to the desk. Has a woman named Barbara Lang been here asking questions about bringing someone in named Ron Lang? The woman behind the desk blinked. Yes? She said she was looking at care options for her husband. But she didn't have any documents. I nodded. Because she doesn't have any rights to him anymore. She looked nervous. She said the family was planning to move him in here soon. That it was all arranged. I walked out without saying another word. That was the last straw. I filed for an emergency court hearing. This time, not just to reinforce the conservatorship, but to legally limit Barb's access. The judge granted it. Barb could no longer make visits without supervision. No more calls to banks. No more doctor inquiries. And most importantly, no more lies to third parties. She didn't take it well. She showed up at the next family barbecue. Not invited. She stood on the edge of the yard, just outside the property line, with a lawn chair and a clipboard. Watching. Taking pictures. That's when I knew this wasn't just about power. This was war. And I wasn't going to lose. 3 days after she showed up at the barbecue with that clipboard like some kind of demented PI, I realized Barb wasn't going to stop, not until she was completely exposed. So I gave her what she wanted. I told my lawyer to prepare one final case. This time, we weren't just defending the conservatorship. We were filing a formal complaint, accusations of defamation, harassment, and financial misconduct. And not just from what she'd done to Ron. We had found something bigger. It started with an old account Ron had forgotten about, a credit card in both his and Barb's names. I found the statement buried in a box of mail Ron kept in the basement. I saw charges for things he never would have approved: spa treatments, $600 handbags, even hotel stays in New Jersey during weekends when Barb said she was volunteering at church retreats. I gave everything to the attorney. And then I made one final move. I called Ron's accountant. He was hesitant at first, but once I showed him my paperwork and the court orders, he agreed to talk. Turns out, Barb had been slowly draining one of Ron's retirement funds for over 3 years. Not huge amounts all at once, just small withdrawals, logged as household repairs or home health expenses. But none of that money ever went to Ron's care. When we added it up, it totaled almost $68,000. That was the nail in the coffin. We brought it all to court. Barb walked in looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not her usual pearls and perfect hair, just plain clothes and a stiff jaw. She tried to represent herself this time. No more lawyer. Probably couldn't afford one anymore. The judge took over an hour reviewing the documents, the statements, the bank records. And then he did what I hoped he would. He stripped Barb of all legal and financial authority tied to Ron, froze the accounts she'd touched, and referred her for a financial misconduct investigation. Potential criminal charges pending. But that wasn't all. The judge also ordered her to issue a public written apology to me and to Ron, not just a letter tucked away in an envelope. A full printed notice mailed to every person she'd contacted with her lies: neighbors, friends, the church, even the nursing home. I don't think I've ever seen a more hollow woman than Barb when she stood to leave the courtroom. She didn't say a word, didn't look at me, just walked out slowly, like her feet had turned to stone. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, proud, but the truth? I felt sad. Sad that it had to come to this. Sad for Ron, who trusted someone for 30 years only to find out she cared more about control than care. Sad for Nate, who lost the mother he'd been trying so hard to protect, even when she didn't deserve it. Ron still has moments of clarity. One morning, not long after the ruling, he looked at me and said, "Thank you for not letting her break me." That hit me hard. As for Nate and me, we're stronger than we've ever been. We had some rocky days in the middle of all this. There were moments I thought the stress might rip us apart. But it didn't. If anything, it pulled us closer. And Barb? She moved out of town a month later. Last we heard, she's living in a small apartment in Harrisburg. Alone. No friends left to gossip with. No keys to anyone else's life. And me? I still don't raise my voice. I don't have to. Because now, when people talk about who runs this family, they look at me. And Barb? She finally learned what control really means. It means doing the right thing even when no one's watching. It means protecting the ones who can't protect themselves. And it means never, ever underestimating the quiet one in the room.